Hi, Todd here from Urban Sound Studio, and today we're taking a look at the mysterious paddle box on the bottom left side of the Oberheim OB-X8. It is this box that hosts the mod paddles, the pitch bend paddles, the transpose buttons, and the Arpeggiator. And if you're like me, the first time you gave it a try, it didn't do exactly what you thought it would. When I pushed the mod paddle up, nothing happened. When I pushed the bend paddle up, the pitch went down. When I pulled it down, it went up. So let's see what's going on. There are two modes, the mod and the Arp. We will start with the modulation, and the labels for that section are at the bottom. Pushing the paddle down increases the amount of modulation from the LFO. The rate knob determines the speed of the LFO. Currently, we are only modulating oscillator 2. Let's modulate both 1 and 2. Or we can just select oscillator 1. I'm going to make some adjustments to make this even more obvious. The depth on the top right applies modulation even when the paddle isn't in use. And when it's used with the paddle, it becomes more of an offset to add additional modulation depth. Let's go to the Page 2 menu. Here there are several different options for the LFO. One of the big differences is selecting between the two different types of LFO styles based on the original OB-X8 or OB-8. Let's focus on our LFO shape. Currently we are on a triangle, which essentially creates a type of vibrato. Let's select square instead. Now it gives us a trill, or it modulates different intervals when holding a chord. And the paddles can push that interval even further than the depth knob. Here is saw up. Sample and hold. Saw down. Or noise. With noise, I find it most useful when turning the depth down and modulating only one oscillator to add a pitch distortion type quality to what would otherwise be a smooth melodic line. If we go back to triangle, another tip is that if you modulate only one of the oscillators, it creates a chorusing type sound. If we go into split mode, we have two different sounds split between the lower and upper point. Using the buttons at the top, we can decide whether the upper or lower sections get modulated. We probably want to modulate only the upper chords and keep the bass notes unaffected. But if we want to modulate the bass notes, we can. One last thing, the synth allows us to add additional modulation with aftertouch. In this case, our pressure acts in a similar manner to using the left paddle. And as you see, my pressure now applies the modulation based on the rate set by the knob on the top left. Now, let's dive deeper into the transpose buttons and the pitch bend paddles. The transpose buttons are global and allow you to pitch up, down, or stay at the default. They can have some creative uses if you apply them while performing. For now, let's focus on the middle buttons for the bend paddles. As mentioned, the pitch goes down when you push it up, and it goes up when you pull it down toward you, just like the original hardware. But you do have the ability to reverse this in the settings if you want to. We can select to bend the notes of only the second oscillator if we want. The amount button determines if you bend by the default whole step or by holding the button and selecting an interval above the lowest C, you could determine the bend amount. Let's set it for an octave. Now I'm bending an octave. A cool effect is to set to bend only one of the oscillators and gradually have the chord tune its way up to the upper octave. Now let's check out a lead sound. Typically with a lead, we'll bend in smaller whole steps rather than a full octave. Compare it to this. Also, we usually bend both oscillators, as bending just one takes away from the unison strength of a lead. And here's the larger interval bend. Here's the smaller interval again. And here's the octave jump. So that covers everything about the mod section, and if we hit mode, we can now flip into the Arp section. The Arp section probably does a lot more than you realize. You can select from different patterns, octaves, and even create sequences. First thing you'll notice is that if we flip between mod and Arp section, our rate speed is independent for each section. The upper labels determine the function of the buttons in Arp mode. There are two different modes, hold and keyboard mode. Let's start in keyboard, which means it will arpeggiate the notes we are performing. We'll play a simple C chord and hit arpeggiate. We hear the notes playing up in the order I perform them. I can also reverse that and have them play in the reverse order. With both lights enabled, it'll perform up, then down. And with both lights off, it'll perform the held notes randomly. It is super important to understand that when you select a mode such as up, it performs them up in the order you inputted them, not in the order they're held on the keyboard. Here's a more abstract chord to showcase this. Now let's play the same chord, but input the notes in a different order. I'm going to shorten my release to make the sequence easier to hear. When holding mode, the 6 buttons underneath determine how many octaves the arpeggiation will perform. Mode plus the hold button will always arpeggiate the original chord in the original octave. You can also customize these transpositions. If you hold mode and arpeggiate, you can perform a sequence from C up to any other note to transpose your chord. We start with C. Let's hit F to go up a fourth, D to go down a major third from there, G to go up a fourth from there, and then we'll go up to the full octave C. Now, mode plus the buttons will allow me to select different combinations of the steps of my sequence. C to F, C to F to D, C to F to D to G, and then up to the full octave. Just remember that the sequence you program are relative to the chord C, so you're transposing by interval, not determining the root notes of the held chord. Now let's check out the hold mode. We can play a chord, hit hold on the top panel, and free up our hands to make adjustments while the arpeggiator runs. We can bend notes, use the mod paddle, or adjust things like our filter. And if I hit chord on the top panel, I can offset the arpeggiator in real time, similar to how I programmed the sequencer before. This allows for our left hand to determine the sequence. Let's put ourselves in random mode and sequencing up the octave to hear how this can sound live. I can even use the transpose buttons with the arpeggiator to further alter the sequence. Just like in the mod section, when we're in split, we can set the arpeggiator to be used on the upper section, the lower section, or both at once. Here's a split patch. Just like the mod section, we could split whether to use the arpeggiator between the lower and upper sounds. Let's adjust the upper and lower sections to get them to cut a bit more. Let's get a beefier bass sound. That's much better. Currently, the ARP mode is set, so the lower split arpeggiates and the upper does not. And I can determine whether it performs the same repeated note or in different octave patterns. Of course, I can turn off lower and arpeggiate only the upper split. This allows for my left hand to be freed up to play a melodic line while the right hand arpeggiates. Thanks for watching. So what did you think? Or do you have any tips of your own? If so, please leave them in the comments below. And as always, please help support the channel by liking this video and hitting subscribe.